Is war an inevitable consequence of being human? This is the key question that lies at the heart of a remarkable correspondence between two of the 20th century's greatest thinkers, the physicist Albert Einstein and the founder of psychoanalysis Sigmund Freud. They were both responding to a world that had not long previously emerged from one cataclysmic war and was soon to dip into another. Indeed, in 1932, Einstein, who was also a keen advocate of the League of Nations and a peace campaigner to boot, asked Freud if he thought war and aggression were forever tied to human psychology and to the course of international relations. Could we ever secure a lasting world peace? He soliloquized. Einstein's letter is deeply prescient, as is Freud's response. Their exchange was titled "Why War?" and the two thinkers explored the nature of war and peace in politics. They discussed human nature, the history of warfare and human aggression, and the hope represented by the foundation of the League of Nations, a precursor to the United Nations, and its promise of global security within a new architecture of international law. For Einstein, future world security meant a shared moral understanding across the global order, that humankind should rise above the state of nature and never devolve into total war again. Is it possible, he asked Freud, to make us proof against the psychoses of hate and destructiveness? But even as Einstein wrote to Freud in the summer of 1932, the Nazi Party became the largest political party in the German Reichstag. Both men felt a sense of apprehension about what was coming. Both were pacifists, both Jewish, both would be driven into exile. Replying to Einstein's letter, Freud wrote that he agreed with everything Einstein had said, particularly the need for a central authority. In short, he described war as futile. I will stop here, as this latest YouTube episode just before the end of another violent year, 2023, is not meant to dissect further the exchange between the two men. It is only meant to take the conclusion of their prolific and intellectual exchange, that war is futile, and apply it to the latest horrendous events in Israel-Palestine that started indiscriminately on 7th October and quickly morphed into a bloody and vengeful Gaza-Israel war. So, I ask, is war futile, as both men concluded earlier? I ask this question today when Israelis haven't, by and large, rid themselves of the trauma that gripped them on 7th October, when a group of Hamas militants and other unidentified actors ambushed the Gaza envelope bordering the Strip, killed 1,200 Israelis, took several hundred hostages, and shattered the myth of Israeli impregnability. As an immediate, almost instinctual consequence, Israel started pounding Gaza unrelentingly, mercilessly, resulting in over 21,000 Palestinian deaths to date, a wholesale destruction of neighborhoods north and south of the Wadi, the transfer of Gazans from their hearths and homes, plus the paralysis of hospitals, schools, UNRWA facilities, places of worship, and public facilities. Watching this tragedy unfold in Gaza is no easy thing for me, even if I'm thousands of miles away from the fog of war. The deliberate dehumanization taking place daily in Gaza, aided and abetted no less by the complacency, and dare I add, complicity at times of some powers and principalities, be they political or religious, makes me question the universalist principles that were meant to govern our world following two devastating wars. As a public international law student and then a lawyer, I'm bemused that international law is being surreptitiously replaced by an international rules-based order that some people control and direct. Just take the ICC, for instance. As its chief prosecutor, picks and chooses the briefs to pursue and the ones he places in deep freeze. Are we creating an exceptionalism whereby international law tenets do not apply for Palestine that incidentally happened to be a signatory of the Statute of Rome? Why do we brandish the nasty word genocide in a hodgepodge manner in some instances, but not in others, when eminent legal scholars like Professor John Dugard have interpreted the Genocide Convention of 1948 and shown its relevance today to Gaza? No red flags here? No screeching alerts? No action? Strange discretion when, in the words of the WHO, the populace of Gaza face hunger and desperation. As some 2 million Gaza residents are herded by Israeli indiscriminate attacks toward the Egyptian Gaza border of Rafah, are we witnessing the forcible transfer of a whole population into Egypt? Is this an ethnic cleansing that is unstoppable? A new Nakba on steroids? And if so, what does all this destruction, this mayhem serve? Of course, it protects the Israeli prime minister, whose lust for power and survival overwhelms humane considerations. Of course, such a war also helps fund further the arms titans of this world, let alone trains the soldiers in warfare. Of course, it coerces nations to drop their masks and show whether they stand with colonial powers in return for economic or political interests, or whether they side with justice. We know all this. You know it. I know it. I'm not reinventing the wheel, as any Arab kid in Palestine or the broader MENA and Gulf regions would tell you without pretending to be an analyst, an observer, or a journalist. But to what purpose? The eradication of Gaza will not eradicate the Israel-Palestine conflict. The ethnic cleansing of some 2 million Gaza Palestinians will not provide Israel with security or firewall the region from further political tumescence. The only option, for me at least, is a peace-driven resolution that tackles an apartheid regime, quashing Palestinians under occupation and giving free rein to its settlers as they commit ignominious and egregious acts of murder, larceny, and even bullying. Israel must be told by its friends and allies that it cannot continue to occupy and spoliate a whole people with impunity and without accountability. But this war doesn't stop in Gaza. We see the settlers' footprints, their rampant incursions into the West Bank, protected by the army, and I genuinely worry that the West Bank, Nablus, Jenin, Tulkarem, Hebron, Bethlehem could become the next target of this forcible transfer that is being inexorably bought by shovelfuls of dollars. This concerns Jordan and Egypt, but it should concern us all too. And let me add here that Palestinians in Israel, fil dakhil, or within the Green Line as they are labeled at times, feel vulnerable too as tensions rise with their Jewish neighbors. Bet HaGefen, or the House of the Vine in Hebrew, in Haifa, for example, have already warned that the multicultural existence of their city is in danger. So, should the world aim for a two-state solution still, or perhaps a binational solution, or one that adheres to the equal respect and equal application of human rights for Israelis and Palestinians? And I stress here, equal rights. At this stage, I don't care too much really about the format, as the future of Palestine, in my opinion, is not a gift to be given either by a partial US administration read my excerpt by the academic Lila Abou-Loughod in the description box, or a dyslexic EU that I am far more familiar with, but by the Arab world, the MENA and Gulf states coming together, marshalling their resources, starting to walk rather than merely to talk, and putting on the table an Arab Initiative Mark II that will resolve this conflict once and for all. Otherwise, the pattern will continue. Whether Biden or Trump is in power, whether Orban or Macron, or even Ursula von der Leyen influence the foreign policy of the EU Commission, whether Netanyahu stays prime minister or is toppled and goes to jail, whether Mahmoud Abbas finally gives up his seat for a new generation to assume the mantle of leadership, or even whether normalization expands or shrinks. All else has proven to be futile over decades, or as Freud and Einstein concluded in their formidable exchanges, war is futile. It remains futile in this case too. Israel will not disappear, but Israel cannot grind Palestinians away too. Maybe we could put this thought, my obiter today, in Santa's red bag for 2024. After all, and in the words of the cartoonist James Thurber, let us not look back in anger, nor forward in fear, but around in awareness. كل عام وأنتم بخير أينما تواجدتم اليوم.